Hey there, Bible nerds. Welcome back to Chapters and Chuckles by Kaye, where we dive into the Bible chapter by chapter. And today we're diving into Deuteronomy Chapter 4. So buckle up because Moses is giving Israel a heartfelt pep talk on the edge of the promised land. And trust me, he is on a roll. So grab your drink, get comfy, and let's dive in. Hey, so Moses, probably clearing his throat, and then he says, "All right, Israel, listen up. Follow God's commands and you can actually live and take the land he's giving you." So classic Moses sounding like a teacher before finals. He's not making up new stuff. He's just reminding them of what God already said at Sinai. Now, aimed at next generation crew about to step into Canaan. Then comes the big one. Don't add or subtract from God's commands. So no remixing. God's words isn't, a DIY project. It's the original recipe and you don't mess with it. That warning shows up again in Revelation 2. So clearly God means it. So why the emphasis? Because we humans love to either overdo it or water it down. Moses is like, don't be like Eve getting tricked in Eden. Learn from the past. And speaking of past messes, remember Baal Peor, when the Israelites got pulled into idol worship and 24,000 died in a plague. Yeah, Moses brings that up. So basically, those who chased idols, gone. But you who stayed faithful, you're here. So let's keep it that way. Bottom line, obedience wasn't just a nice idea, it was life or death. They were heading into a land full of giants and fortified cities. Without God, they were toast. So Moses says, follow the playbook and live. Freelance and it's game over. So high stakes, indeed. Moses continues, probably gesturing like a TED talker. I've taught you God's commands. Now it's your turn to live them out in the land you're entering. These weren't just wilderness rules. They were meant for everyday life in the promised land. Okay. Then comes the best part. He says, if you obey these laws, the nations around you will be blown away by your wisdom. So Moses reveals God's secret evangelism plan. Israel's obedience would make them a living billboard for how good life can be under God's rule. People would see Israel's just laws and say, who has a God this close? Who else has rules this fair? And here's the twist. Israel wasn't impressive because of size or military power. Their secret weapon, God's nearness and his wise, righteous law. If they lived it out, they'd shine like a holy spotlight to the world. Just like Queen of Sheba later showing up to see Solomon's legendary wisdom. Moses points, obedience equals witness. They weren't just following rules, they were showing the world who God is. No pressure at anything, just representing the creator of the universe. And honestly, that still applies today. When we live out God's truth, people notice. As Jesus later puts it, you are the light of the world. Moses was already laying the groundwork for that right here. And Moses switches gears here from national pride to personal responsibility. Like, be careful. Don't forget what you've seen and don't let it fade from your heart. Teach it to your kids and grandkids. Basically, don't get spiritual amnesia. He calls them to remember that fiery day at Sinai, when the mountain blazed, clouds swirled, and God spoke audibly from the fire. Then, they saw no form, just heard his voice. And what did he give them? The 10 Commandments carved in stone. aka the heart of the covenant. No other nation had a moment like that. Moses is like, never forget what God did. Tell your story. This stuff matters. Even though most of the crowd were kids and unborn when it happened, Moses treats them like they were there. Why? Because memory is communal, and adults are responsible to pass down what God has done. And this isn't just about history class. When you share how God showed up, it strengthens you and your listeners. Testimonies aren't optional. They're how we keep God's work alive in our hearts. Moses keeps saying, watch yourselves closely, and don't forget. Why? Because forgetfulness leads to drift. If they let the fire at Sinai moment grow cold, so will their reverence. He wants them to keep that awe fresh so they'll live with proper fear of the Lord. As one Bible scholar puts it, remembering fuels obedience. So when you recall God's power and love, you're more likely to stay close. Moses knew that, so he's saying, don't let your God memories fade. Keep them alive and pass them on. Now Moses hits them with a big therefore. So since they didn't see any form of God at Mount Sinai, only heard his voice, they need to be extra careful. No idols, period. Don't make statues of people, animals, fish, or even heavenly bodies like the sun or moon. Why? Because God is way too big to be reduced to a sculpture or cosmic bobblehead. Trying to represent him visually only corrupts the truth. He reminds them, you literally heard the second commandment straight from God. So don't turn around and break it by carving up a cow or bowing to stars. They were surrounded by idol worshipping cultures, but Israel was called to be different. As one commentator or Bible scholar put it, don't try to replace God with something you can see. So that's downgrade energy. When Moses throws in a wild metaphor, Moses throws in a wild metaphor saying, God brought you out of the iron smelting furnace of Egypt. So in other words, slavery was the crucible that forged Israel into a nation, and God rescued them from it to make them his special possession, pretty much. So don't turn around and start worshiping the gods he saved you from. That'd be a facepalm moment for sure. And then Moses gets personal. He says, God was angry with me because of you, and now I can't enter the land. So that is a big ouch, for sure. He's not blaming them outright, but he's saying, even I face consequences for not listening to God. Don't make the same mistake. Finally, he drops a powerful double description of God: a consuming fire, a jealous God. That's not moody or petty. It's holy and passionate. God doesn't tolerate being sidelined by knockoff deities. He's like a loyal spouse who won't share your heart with someone else. His fire burns away sin and protects the purity of the relationship. So bottom line, Moses has gone full caps lock on no idols. He's warned them, reminded them who they are, and made it clear this is non-negotiable. Don't mess with the covenant. Worship the one true God and him alone. Now, Moses looks ahead and it gets heavy. He warns, if you settle in the land, have kids, and start chasing idols, it's not going to end well. He basically says, I'm calling heaven and earth as witnesses. If you break the covenant, you will be kicked out. Exiles coming. And sadly it did, Assyria, Babylon, this prophecy hit hard centuries later. The consequences, they'd lose their land, get scattered among nations, and end up worshiping lifeless gods made of wood and stone. So mute, blind, and useless. Moses is like, you want idols? Fine, you'll get them, just not the way you think. So it's poetic justice with a side of heartbreak. But, and it's a big, beautiful but. Moses doesn't end in despair. He offers this grace bomb. If you seek God, even from exile, with all your heart and soul, you will find him. He promises that even after failure, God's mercy still stands. He won't abandon you or forget his covenant. Why? Because he's merciful and he keeps his word to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That is huge. This isn't about a half-hearted, oops. This is a full-on return to God, and he'll meet you there. It's the Old Testament version of the prodigal son story, and Moses even says, it will happen in later days. A prophecy of return, restoration, and grace. So yeah, fire and judgment are real, but Moses make it clear. Mercy has the final word, even in exile. God's arms are still open. Seek him and you'll find him always. Moses wraps it up with a bold reminder. There is no God like our God. Period. He invites Israel to zoom out and reflect. Has any nation ever heard God speak from fire and live? Has any God ever rescued a people through miracles, plagues, and power like ours did in Egypt? Spoiler, the answer is a big fat no. This is Moses hammering home the main point. Yahweh is the one true God. All those wild moments from Sinai's fire to the Red Sea split happened to cement that truth in their hearts forever. No idols. No idols. God is a jealous God, so remember that. No competition, just him. So Moses brings the love. God spoke from heaven to teach you, and he chose you because he loved your ancestors. That's why he rescued you and is now clearing the way for you to inherit a land full of nations bigger and stronger than you. Translation, this isn't about you being awesome. It's about God being faithful. Then he closes with a powerful call, saying, acknowledge today that the Lord is God in heaven and on earth. There is no other. Obey his commands so things will go well for you and your kids, and you'll live long in the land he's giving you. So, yeah, Moses pulls together history, theology, and real life application into one epic closing argument. It's basically saying you've seen who God is. Now live like it. Choose life. It's worth it. It's so worth it. And the people probably thinking like, preach, Moses, preach, preach. All right. So after Moses drops the mic on his epic sermon, this chapter ends with a quick but meaningful epilogue. First, we get a legal side note. Moses sets aside 3 cities of refuge east of the Jordan, which are Bezer, Ramoth, and Golan, where people who accidentally killed someone could flee for safety. These weren't random places. They were part of God's justice system to prevent revenge killings. Moses couldn't designate all 6 cities yet, but he followed through with what he could do. That's a subtle but powerful lesson. Partial obedience is still, obedience. He didn't wait for perfect conditions. He did the part God gave him right then. He did what he could at that time. So respect. Then he says, or on the text it says, this is the law Moses gave the Israelites. So it recaps the setting east of Jordan after defeating kings Sihon and Og near Beth Peor. This marks the end of Moses' first big message and sets the stage for the next chapter where he will deliver the 10 commandments. Think of it like the previously in Deuteronomy, thus ends, sermon number 1. So anyways, so that's a wrap on chapter 4. We've seen Moses in full mentor mode, pleading, warning, reminding, and encouraging. So it's been fire and grace, history and heart, and we're just getting started. So let's go ahead and move on to our fun fact corner. Baal Peor throwback. So when Moses references what the Lord did to Baal Peor, he's pointing to a wild story back in the book of Numbers, chapter 25. In that incident, Israelites were seduced into idol worship with Moabite women, bowing to a deity named Baal of Peor. It was so bad that a plague broke out, killing 24,000 people until Phineas, who is a priest, stopped it dramatically. So this serves as a permanent cautionary tale in Israel's collective memory, sort of an infamous case study of, why idolatry equals bad news. So, wow, what a chapter, huh? We learned definitely a lot. So what's coming up next on our journey through Deuteronomy? So just a spoiler, a little bit of or whatever. So in chapter 5, Moses is going to reiterate the famous 10 commandments to the people, sort of like saying, all right, team, here are the ground rules one more time. It's a classic moment, almost like a renewal of vows between Israel and God. We'll hear those big, thou shalt nots all over again, of course, with Moses adding his own commentary and emphasis. So spoiler alert, Moses might tweak the presentation just a bit for the new generation, and there are going to be insights into why these commandments matter for their future. It's not a boring repeat. It's like listening to your favorite song, but acoustically remastered with depth and passion. So join us next time as we dive into Deuteronomy Chapter 5. Now, thank you for listening to Chapters and Chuckles by Kaye. If you've enjoyed this episode, please follow or subscribe. You can catch new episodes on YouTube and Spotify, podcasts only. Until next time, stay curious and stay blessed.